Cubs winning right now 9-1, looking to defeat the Cardinals, as it looks like the Cubs will improve to a 6-game win streak and finally reach the 500 mark on the season. Hey everybody, welcome here to Cubs Baseball Talk. Bear Down Studios here, as today going to be talking about the Cubs, the trade deadline, the trades that has already happened, future trades, and more. As today I am joined by a special friend of mine, Wyatt Unger, making his debut. How you doing, Wyatt?
I'm good. I heard you sent me the first Cubs talk, and I said I wanted to be on here, and we're making that happen. And it seems like we got a lot to talk about.
We do indeed. Right now, it's a Chicago channel primarily, for the Bears, but I like to talk about other things like the Cubs. And right now, man, Chicago up 9-1. Seeing right now on the MLB app, they got runners on first and second. Doesn't matter, Cubs are gonna win this ball game, but I got a question for you, man. Are the Cubs legit? They're about to make it 6 in a row. They're about to be 500 on the season. Do the Cubs continue to be buyers, or do they become sellers?
Yeah, the Cubs are putting an absolute whooping on the Cardinals right now. They're going to be at 500 after this, make it 6 in a row, 8-2 in the last 10. And this one's going to push them 4 games out of a wild card spot, as well as, I believe, 5.5 out of the division. So I think the book is closed on the Cubs selling off pieces like Marcus Stroman and Cody Bellinger. But the thing is, we saw the Angels, once they rolled out trading Ohtani, they turned into buyers, and they already struck with Lucas Giolito last night. So you wonder if you could see a similar thing for the Cubs, who, although they haven't been in this retool for that long, they have built up some prospects. They have guys they can ship off for immediate help. And I think that this, if they were to go for it, I think it'd be huge in the minds of Marcus Stroman and Cody Bellinger, as far as these guys are serious and I want to be here because we're winning. But one thing about the Cubs that I am a little bit concerned with is that they kind of beat up on the teams they should beat up on, but the teams they would be seeing if they were to make the playoffs, not doing too hot against, because they're sitting with a 25-39 record against teams above 500. But they're hot. They're finally at 500. They've been in what seemed to be a year-long slump until July, and they're right there. There's a lot of teams that are right there, and the Cubs are now with that group, and there's a lot of guys available. So I don't know if they're buyers. I just know they're not sellers right now.
If there's a particular group of people who think the Cubs are buyers, it is all Chicago Cub fans over social media. Everywhere you see on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, it is extend Bellinger, extend Marcus Stroman, and keep those guys and try and make a run here. I remember Bellinger in an interview stating how he loves the locker room chemistry here and he thinks these guys can make a push for the playoffs, and you like to see that from one of your own players. As Cody Bellinger having a hot month of July, no other player is batting as phenomenal as Cody Bellinger, now registering his 13th multi-hit game, 13 home runs in the month of July, and in clutch situations, Cody Bellinger is getting the job done. He's so far 2 for 3 tonight with the Cubs, as they will improve to 51-51. And back to what you were saying too, Chicago, maybe 25-39 against teams over 500, but they are taking advantage of the teams that are below. Right now, with this win, the Cubs will go on to 26-12 against teams below 500. And in the standings right now, Chicago, with this win, they'll be 5.5 games behind the Milwaukee Brewers in the NL Central, and in the wild card, they will be 4 games behind the Reds, Diamondbacks, and Marlins, who are 3.5 games ahead of the Cubs, but they are coming, and they are coming fast. And one thing, too, to put the cherry on the top, Chicago, they got a real chance at pushing for the playoffs. They have a nice schedule, not too hard, except a couple matchups entering the month of August and September.
Yeah, I mean, Bellinger, and it's not just any player. It's not like, Ian Happ is coming out or Dansby Swanson is coming out and saying this, and it's like, oh, he's going to be there for 5-6 years anyway. This is the guy who is their second biggest question mark in the offseason, and even right now, because of the uncertainty with the Cubs' status in the trade market. So for a guy like Bellinger to not only be playing like this, it's obviously a huge buffer, but just to be so energetic about staying in Chicago, it's huge for them. Because even if they're flooded with outfielders long term, that's a talented player who has shown the willingness to even move to first base. he'll always have a spot in that lineup if he wants to stay. And I mean, yeah, you can't understate beating up on bad teams because it's still a part of the game. I'm sure the Giants would maybe winning the NL West if they were as good as the Cubs when it came to playing the bottom feeders. I mean, they just seem to play down to guys. But again, you gotta wonder if that's still a question mark when you run into the Braves and the Brewers and the Reds down the stretch if you're the Cubs.
And back to the trade line too, it is almost safe to say, like you were saying, that the Cubs will likely now be buyers. Who are some guys you think Chicago could be targeting? One guy I have an interest is could be targeting the first baseman C.J. Cron back in Colorado. He's a slug guy that can definitely hit bombs at Wrigley with that wind blowing. And Chicago has been looking for a first baseman this year. They tried with Matt Mervis for a bit and then sent him back down. They tried with Eric Hosmer but DFA him. Trey Mancini has not been getting the job done offensively for the Cubs. And then recently, Chicago calling up Jared Young, but then sent him back down. So who do you think the Cubs may bring in by the trade deadline?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I really like Matt Mervis for the future. But, right now, of course, when the Cubs entered the year, they wanted to see what they were working with. And it didn't really work out for him. And, first base, I've heard C.J. Cron and Carlos Santana were the big two. Division rival, and the Brewers picked up Carlos Santana earlier today. So, C.J. Cron's probably the lone guy at first base. Although there are some other guys, if they were to be available, like Brent Rooker. But I do, the fact that he is on Oakland, so he's probably always available, but he does have a few years of team control, so I don't know if he's a guy they're just going to throw out there. But there are some rentals like Heimer Candelario of Washington who could, be repositioned. But yeah, I think Cron would be good. That is one of their weaknesses. Because you look around the lineup and really like 7 to 8 of those guys on every night, you're confident that they can give you something. So, I mean, Mark Canha, the Mets season has absolutely spiraled, and the Cubs have shown a willingness to pay. They still have room to, within their current payroll and the luxury tax, and that's a guy who can move to first base. He's been at first base at various points this year. I'm sure the Cardinals, well, that's just me automatically going to general trade guys available, but I don't think the Cardinals and Cubs will be making any deals. So yeah, I mean, Cron's definitely a guy. The Rockies, for once, finally are looking like they're going to commit to trading some guys, so that will open up some targets. Cron being one of them for Chicago, but I think if they were to become buyers, it's got to be pitching, and more pitching. They kind of have guys who didn't really work out prospect-wise. Brennan Davis, Kevin Alcantara, they have plenty of prospects blossoming, but it seems like a lot of the guys they had gotten when they sold off in 2021, it's not really been working out. And for them, the prospects they're hitting on have just been the ones they've drafted and signed themselves. So they do have guys to move. I think they're definitely going for a rental solely because their farm system's not at the point where they can get an elite controllable arm. So if that were to be the case, with Giolito gone, Michael Lorenzen's out there, Eduardo Rodriguez, two guys from the Tigers who are just clear sellers. Could see, in 2021 during that Cubs fire sale, the White Sox came calling for a couple arms in Craig Kimbrell and Ryan Tepera. Maybe we see the opposite, because while Giolito's gone, Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly, as well as Kendall Graveman, are still there. There's still Paul Blackburn on Oakland. I just think, it makes, if the Cubs were going to buy and the first thought isn't we need pitching, then they shouldn't be buying in the first place. I think that's got to be the target, and it's a seller's market. Because no one's really, besides the Angels, ponied up pieces and gone for it so far. So I think if the Cubs were to swoop in, I mean, all the names are still there. Will they be in a few days? It's yet to be seen.
And some good input right there. And even if the Cubs are not able to be able to have a successful second half of the season. You know, maybe they make it to the wild card and get eliminated. Their future is very bright. I mean, definitely need to improve their pitching aspect, and a guy that can really help them for next year or maybe in the second half this year is Hayden Wesneski. He's been pretty good ever since the Cubs sent him back down. 3 starts in July, 1.64 ERA, 44% of a strikeout rate, and a 4.7 walk rate, including his last start 4 days ago, going 5 innings, 4 hits, no runs, and 8 Ks. Great night from Hayden Wesneski, and not only is Wesneski a guy the Cubs have to look forward to in the future, but so is Pete Crow Armstrong, who the Cubs acquired from in a trade when the Cubs sent Javier Baez to the Mets, and the Cubs were able to get the youngster Pete Crow Armstrong.
Yeah, Pete Crow Armstrong is just an amazing talent, like just a complete natural in center field. And he's really progressed offensively. You know, when he was drafted as well as when he first was progressing, they weren't sure about his long-term tool as a hitter, but he just continues to hit every level he's been at in the minors. Likely not a guy to help him this year, but Wesneski, obviously someone who can. You know, the stuff just kind of jumps off the charts. You watch one clip of him as a pitcher, and you'll see the slider immediately. That's the first pitch that's going to jump out. Just tremendous. And when he was up earlier, obviously didn't have it immediately locating wise. Kind of left his fastballs over the plate. They got hit, and then he couldn't really get that sweeper to translate from a AAA pitch to an MLB pitch. But I think he's built his confidence back up in AAA, and that's a guy who, if your rotation continues to falter out, Drew Smyly and Marcus Stroman, obviously you let them go out every 5 days and figure it out, but those are guys who haven't gotten it done as of late. You could definitely give them a shot over Jameson Taillon. He has pitched better, but even if you just incorporate him into the bullpen, have him essentially be a free trade deadline acquisition by just calling him up, because we've seen the stuff work last year at the MLB level. So I think that's a guy they can give the chance to, and maybe they get surprised.
No, I agree with you, yeah, and the Cubs in the rotation, their future rotation with a new ace, Justin Steele, could be looking like Steele at number 1, Stroman at 2 if they do keep him and extend him, Taillon at 3, as he has 3 more years left on his 4-year deal with the Cubs. 4, could it potentially be Drew Smyly, but looking to bank on Hayden Wesneski, and just that 5th guy, who can the Cubs have as their 5th starting rotation? It's likely they won't keep Hendricks for the following season, so it's a big mystery who the Cubs may keep at that 5th spot. As last but not least, Wyatt, still a few days left to go before the trade deadline finishes on August 1st. Who are some guys that you think could be moving on in these next few 96 hours?
Yeah, so we've seen some small reliever trades and the Carlos Santana move. Besides that, Giolito was like the one big domino to fall. And so as baseball fans, we're all hoping that just starts this spiral of a bunch of trades, because that's just fun. But I mean, Giolito was the most obvious guy. You knew he was going to get moved, and he was probably the best out of anyone who it's like, oh yeah, they're probably gone. And so you would, as a fan, I'm kind of hoping that would have, sparked some more rumors, but it's not really apparent. And some stuff that came out today is that the Dodgers are, it's like the Cardinals said we're not moving him, but the Dodgers are really trying to swing something for Nolan Arenado. They would get one of Jordan Montgomery or Jack Flaherty as well, but an LA Times article came out today that not only would Arenado move his trade clause for the Dodgers, but we've seen the Cardinals, when they first declared to be sellers, they had an ask of controllable young pitching, and the Dodgers have more of that than anybody else in the league. The Pirates have gotten some hits on some of their pitchers, Rich Hill, who's just for this year, but then David Bednar, Mitch Keller, Colin Holderman. Those are 3 guys who, if they wanted to completely commit to a rebuild, just have their prospects play and see who's fit to be an MLB player over the next couple years. Those are guys who trade at peak value right now, all with a lot of control left. Keller's got 2 more years after this year, Bednar's got 3, and Holderman's got 5. And they've gotten hits on those guys. Whether there's a deal you never know. The Rangers are trying to get starting pitching and relief help. They're pretty much trying to get a 2-for-1 here, kill two birds with one stone. They looked at the White Sox for Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly, as well as the Tigers for Michael Lorenzen and Jason Foley. And the Nationals could be another team with Trevor Williams and Kyle Finnegan, some duo like that. And then something else is that the Padres, we knew they would list Snell and Hader, but we didn't know they'd list Juan Soto, who is officially out there. You know, they're going to listen on him. I think it's much more likely that they trade Hader rather than Snell, but it looks like that loss to the Pirates last night kind of broke them. You know, they have Texas coming up, so you never know. It's baseball, anything can happen, but you're likely looking at even more losses after that. Facing a juggernaut like that, they're already 6.5 out. I mean, I think you got to pack it in. You know, it's not like this was your last chance. Everyone's a free agent. You can't pay everyone. They're going to be good for a while. They have the ability to be good for a while. So they might just go for the reset and trade Snell and Hader. And I would see, you know, a swing on guys who are controllable past this year, because we saw the report come out about a week ago that teams are kind of going to guys who are controlled, and you know, that's Dylan Cease, that's who else? That could be Aaron Savali, Shane Bieber before his injury, guys like that who, you know, have control past this year. That's Mitch Keller as well. But I'd gotta think the Padres would also put Seth Lugo out there. He has an opt-out after this year. It's $7.5 million. He is worth way more than that after reestablishing himself. So I think he's got to be out there. Like I touched on earlier, targets for the Cubs: Michael Lorenzen and Eduardo Rodriguez. They're out there. Flaherty and Montgomery are obviously there. You know, it's still yet to be seen if Scherzer or Verlander go out there, because the teams that have been interested are pretty good teams, and at least at least Scherzer has, you know, shown willingness to, yeah, I'll go to a winning team for this year, and then we'll see what happens. But I mean, that's the gist of it. It's not really an offensive market. It's a lot of pitchers, and it's a lot of pitchers who really profile as average, who are going to get these teams some pretty good boost to farm systems, because a lot of the offensive guys, the market's not flooded with offensive rentals, and that's always you know, the go-to around this time of year because they're cheaper. And so that's Heimer Candelario, who's a free agent after this year. But after that, I mean, Tommy Pham if the Mets decide to sell. But like, Bellinger was like probably the next best guy. Well, he'd obviously be better than anyone else, but just the next most realistic guy. And so now you're starting to dig into the Brendan Donovans or the Lane Thomases of the world, who have a lot of team control. So it's not really guys who you can bank on being moved just because of the price. So it's definitely a pitcher's market, and there's guys there. So I'm sure, you know, teams are going to find their identity, and they're going to have to decide on it quick, because, you know, the only reason that there's no movement right now is because everyone's borderline. There's very few teams that are like far and away elite. You know, that's Baltimore, Texas, Tampa, and Atlanta, and the Dodgers. After that, you know, teams that are good may not sell, but there's a lot of teams thinking like, man, the Braves are a wagon this year, the Rays are good, the Rangers are good, like, is this my year to trade prospects? And a lot of them haven't been able to answer that with a yes yet. So,
which is going to be interesting to see on the Cubs too, because despite them on a good streak as of late, about to be 500 on the season, you know, they could be buyers and not trade anybody, but even if they get to the postseason, it's not likely they're going to get that far when you got powerhouse teams, like you said, like Texas, the Dodgers, Baltimore, the Rays. And you were spot on too. It's more of a pitcher's market right now available. I mean, you know, we obviously saw in 2016 when, you know, the Yankees traded away Chapman to the Cubs, worked out, and they extended him in the offseason. Cubs may be looking to do the same thing by giving away Bellinger despite their winnings and sign him in the offseason. But you're spot on, no doubt that, you know, in the trade line for 2023. It is more on which teams can get their hands on some good quality pitchers or some great pitchers like Scherzer for a time being, and then on the offseason just reset. That will do it for episode 5 of Cubs Baseball Talk. Wyatt Unger, thank you for joining me here. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.